Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel, Jumpstart Nation, Getting America Back to Work. Please welcome our panelists, President and CEO, Permac Industries, Darlene Miller, Chairman and CEO, M&T Bank Corporation, Robert G. Wilmers, Secretary, U.S. Department of Labor, Hilda L. Solis, President, the Joyce Foundation, Ellen Alberding, President and CEO, Coca-Cola Refreshments, the Coca-Cola Company, Steve Cahillane. And please welcome back as our moderator, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this panel is to give you a little insight about what's going on in the American economy today, what are some of the barriers to growth, what are some of the drivers of growth, and what can we do to reduce the barriers and increase the drivers. We have a very interesting panel. Let me start by just telling you a little about them so you'll have a better feel for how to absorb what they're going to tell you. Ellen Alberding is the president of the Joyce Foundation, which, as you know, is one of our sponsors here. They make tens of millions of dollars of grants every year only in the Great Lakes region. And one of the things they do is to promote employment and workforce development. Last year, Ellen was appointed vice chair of the City Colleges of Chicago, so she knows a lot about this. Steve Cahillane is the president and CEO of Coca-Cola Refreshments, which is basically the name of the North American operating unit of Coca-Cola. And in what was a very difficult economy, his company actually had significant growth. And he's going to explain why and what relevance that has to other things. Darlene Miller is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Person of the Year, who has a company, Permac, in Burnsville, Minnesota, which manufactures high-precision, highly engineered transportation, medical, and aerospace components. She's a member of the President's Council on Jobs, and she created something called Right Skills Now, which might also be called Skills Right Now. To deal with this issue we talked about last year, which is that there are more than 3 million job openings in America that are being filled at about half the rate of previous recessions. And one of the significant reasons is the lack of people who can do the jobs that are open in place after place in America. This is really important. I was in Silicon Valley the other night having dinner with a bunch of people who told me that if they had adequately trained people within 2 years, they'd hire 3 million more people. And they and all of their affiliates across American information technology. So the number may or may not have been a little high, but they're serious people, and this is a general problem. And if you want to get 2 million more manufacturing jobs back to America, we have to listen to this story. Robert Wilmers is the chairman and CEO of the M&T Bank Corporation from upstate New York. And he has a long and distinguished career as a banker. And he told me that he had the third largest number of small business loans guaranteed by the SBA of any bank east of the Mississippi, in an area upstate New York which has seen its own share of economic challenges. He's going to talk to us a little bit about what the impediments to this kind of financing are and why it's slowing down small business growth. And of course, Hilda Solis is the Secretary of Labor. You might be interested to know that her first elected public office, way back in 1985, when she was 16 years old, was as a member of the Rio Hondo Community College Board of Trustees. So she's been working at this for a very long time. So with that background, I'd just like to start Ellen, I think I'll start with you. What's your take on the Great Lakes job situation, and why does the Joyce Foundation make grants in this area? What's your analysis of the potential for growth and where it is? We were just talking about this backstage, and I think you might be interested.
Well, first of all, we are a regional grant maker because we believe that there is a regional economy, there are regional transportation systems. We need to think regionally in our country in order to solve problems. The big reason we are regional, though, if you look out the window just outside here, is the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes join our region together. They are a tremendous business grower and economic driver in the region. They're also a tremendous environmental resource that needs to be protected, and if it's going to be protected, it needs the cooperation of all of the states and Canada in order to do that. So that is what underlies our focus on regional issues. As far as workforce and employment, it is one of the very top priorities that we have. Unemployment is obviously a huge problem in our region, but we also have great drivers of new ideas and successes. We're going to hear from Darlene about Right Skills Now, which is actually a grantee of ours, I'm very proud to say. But we are very particularly interested in the role of community colleges in preparing workers for those unfilled jobs. So we're hearing a lot from you and from employers about open jobs that they cannot find skilled workers to fill. We believe that community colleges can drive production of those skilled employees, but also we, as you said in your opening comments, we know that 2/3 of the workers in 5 years from now are going to require a 1-year certificate or degree of some kind. So there's a whole debate about, college going and whether college going should be our goal. And I'm sure that almost everyone in this room who went to college went to a 4-year college. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about economically valuable certificates and degrees that are produced by community colleges. And let me just say that community colleges are all over the map in terms of quality. There are some absolutely excellent community colleges. Valencia College, community college system in Florida is a great example. They won the Aspen Prize for Excellence this year. They have a 95% success rate in placing their students either going on to college or into jobs. And then there are college systems like the one on whose board I sit here in Chicago, city colleges with 125,000 students. So that's more than DePaul, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and UIC combined. For those of you who are local here, it's a huge system, and it has not had great results. The graduation rates have been lower than you would like, 7% when we started on our turnaround efforts, and employers didn't want to hire from the city colleges. And that's what Mayor Emanuel is turning around, and we on the board are hoping to turn around by connecting what we're doing to the needs of local employers. So we have employers telling us what they need right now, and we are trying to produce people who have those skills. And we're also talking to economists and employers who are thinking out a few years and saying, what do we need a few years from now? And we are redesigning the curriculum so that we're producing workers who have the skills that they anticipate we'll need in a few years. So it's a complex system. We're very excited to be funding great new ideas, as well as my own personal participation working with Mayor Emanuel and other leadership at city colleges.
Darlene, the manufacturing recovery or surge, it started really before the general job growth picture got very good over the last 27 months until the recent couple of months that were somewhat discouraging because they were lower. But for 33 months, we've had growth in manufacturing jobs. First, and a lot of them are clearly jobs being brought back to America. I think these folks will be interested in your perspective on, number one, why is it happening? Why are we growing manufacturing jobs again now? And number two, what are the constraints in terms of finding trained workers? And tell us what you did about it. Tell us about getting your right skills now.
Well, to be honest, our levels were back to 2000 levels in 2008, so we had a long way to come back up. But we are now back at those levels, I'm very proud to say, and continue to grow. There is definitely a resurgence in manufacturing, and what we have to remember is that the U.S. does produce more than China, India, Brazil, and Russia combined. So that's a lot of manufacturing. And we're here having a lot of reshoring coming back to the States. And, you know, part of that is due, of course, to the energy costs, to all the transportation, the, you know, currency. There's many issues that are causing companies to come back to the States to have parts manufactured here if they're not selling directly over to the other countries. But our biggest problem is finding skilled labor, skilled help. It's no longer just labor, it's skilled talent, actually, is what we need. And so I'm really proud to say we started a program called Right Skills Now, and this is for CNC machinists, and it's a fast-track, accelerated, stackable credited program that's replicable. In fact, we have 18 schools running this program right now, and I'm really proud to say it was a collaboration, a partnership between Community College, Dunwoody College of Technology, who I know is here today, and NAM and NIMS and ACT. And it really took out any fear of being successful because it was such a great collaboration. Everybody served a part of this program. And what it is 18 weeks in-school training for CNC machining, and then an 8-week internship program where the employers are engaged and hiring these interns, and then they can continue to advance their careers with the companies they're with, or they can continue to grow on to their, add additional college credits, go on to additional schooling. So we've already graduated 2 classes that are now interning. I'm proud to say I have interns at my company. It is working really well. These people are paid a nice wage, starting out maybe at $14 to $16 an hour easily. For somebody with 18 weeks of schooling, it's immense. And I guess the biggest part to remember is we have 600,000 openings in manufacturing today, and we can't find those jobs. So we don't have an employment issue or an unemployment issue, we have an employment issue. And the biggest thing is because we need talent now today. We need these people that have the training, that have math skills, have problem-solving skills. We don't need labor to just come in and run the old-fashioned equipment. Our equipment is very high-tech. It's $500,000 and more, so it requires a lot of skill. And so this Right Skills Now is really helping fill that need, and we hope to replicate it throughout the United States.
Secretary Solis, if the community colleges are supposed to do this, and I think they once did, when I was a governor, we had a 10-year effort to restructure our whole economy. We were one of only, in the 80s, which were terrible for manufacturing in America, we were one of only about 8 states that gained manufacturing jobs. But our community colleges changed their curriculum every semester in response to the emerging economy. How did this go wrong, and what can the Labor Department do, and what are you doing to try to really ratchet up our ability to simultaneously train for the economy so we don't have these people, these job openings staying open so long? It's maddening in a country where, you know, we fight now we're having political arguments over how many jobs are created every month when there are millions of posted job openings that could be filled. So say a little about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would just like to say that it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you and this distinguished panel, and to really kind of describe some of the challenges that we're facing overall. Yes, we need more people that are better skilled and trained. We need more credentials, and we're finding that our community colleges in the past offered so many things for so many people.
And now with this recovery that we're going through, we're finding that, yes, there's a shortage of people that have the appropriate skills. So employers are telling us for the first time, we can't find appropriate skilled individuals. We don't necessarily need a 4-year college degree student or person. What we need is someone who has soft skills, adaptability, has some basic foundational skills. You can get that at a community college or even in an apprenticeship program. And in part, what we're asking through the Department of Labor, through new funding that we have, it's called the TAA Community College Fund. There's going to be about $2 billion. The first $1 billion is already going to be sent out. And what it is capacity building. It's not about necessarily access, but it's looking at what's happening on a regional sector basis in terms of what businesses want to see. So if it's biomedicine, if it's renewable energy, if it's medicine, healthcare fields, nursing, all of those areas, we want to make sure that industry is working on campuses and vice versa so we can get the right curriculum down. And the curriculum looks like what the entrepreneur wants. So whether it's working on the assembly line or in an office building, it has to reflect what the needs of the businesses want. That's the difference here. We're not just going to throw money at the problem. It's about saying, if you want to play with us and get this going and continue to help fund your campus, then you have to agree that you're, at the end of the day, it's a credential that's going to mean something. It's a credential that's going to apply to a job. So that's the other part of this new idea that we have to help to restructure what we're doing. Typically, Department of Labor doesn't always work with community colleges. We fund different groups, and this time we're saying no, community colleges are one of the best outlets because they are flexible, adaptable, and you don't necessarily have to go for 2 years. You can go for 6 weeks, 6 months, or 1 year.
Thank you. Well, I wanted you to have a little overview of the workforce issues here. And again, this is one of the things we tried to come to grips with last year. It's exceedingly frustrating to think that these jobs are opening and not being filled. And I do think that we're making progress, but every place needs to have a program like Right Skills Now, and the community colleges do need to kind of overhaul you're trying to affect here. And the Labor Department can make a big difference. Let's talk about two other parts of the pie now. First, I'll start with the big business issues. Coca-Cola managed to grow at a fairly robust rate in the United States, much faster than the economy as a whole. How'd you do it, and what, if any, relevance does it have to other sectors of the economy?
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your continued leadership. It started with a belief. 3-4 years ago, we were not growing in North America, and the experts were saying that our best days were behind us. But we believed in the United States of America, and we believed that the United States of America's best days, in fact, were still in front of us and still are in front of us, and the demographics would support that. And therefore, we had to make a bet and say, as a big part of the Coca-Cola company, we have a responsibility to grow. And our bet was in the form of investment. We had to invest in our brands. We had to increase our investment in our brands. We had to increase our investment in innovation, things like zero and no-calorie offerings, which are now a big part of our portfolio, and we over-invest in those because that's what people want. We had to invest in training and development because everything that everybody's talking about is true. It is very difficult to find skilled talent and non-skilled talent, but you need it, and you need to bring them into your organization in an inclusive way and invest to make sure that you're successful. And we invested millions and millions of dollars in incremental salespeople because we had all this belief. And it started working for us, and it was all about very, very dedicated resource reallocation to continue to invest in people, brands, capability, innovation, and then find the right partners around the country who are willing to work with us to make sure that they understood exactly what we were doing, the value that we were adding to society. And we've now celebrated 8 consecutive quarters of growth in North America, very pleasing growth, and we feel like we're building something sustainable, but there's still an awful lot of work to do.
Let me ask you this. Is it because Coke's so big and you have enough cash to do it? Do you basically do your own training in-house? Do you train your own workers, or do you look to local community colleges or other kind of jobs alliances to get your employees?
We do both, and more we're looking to partner with government, civil society to develop programs that will help us find the right people who are easier to train and develop, who are receptive to the training and development. We have to do the training. We don't expect anybody to come on board and be able to do the job and understand the job. But what we want and what we need is the capacity to learn, the capacity to be trained. One of the initiatives we just announced a few weeks ago was that we're going to hire over 800 military veterans that are returning to our shores. And And that's really important for us because these heroes who are returning have the skills, the capability, the dedication to be successful in our company. We know that. They've been trained by the greatest military on the planet Earth. But they don't know how to sell Coca-Cola, manufacture Coca-Cola, or distribute Coca-Cola. But they know how to do, first thing in the Army you learn is the answer no doesn't exist. Well, that's a pretty good salesperson. Somebody who moves, supply chain lines in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think they can understand how to develop a supply chain that gets to every little mom and pop grocery store in the country. They don't know how to do it day one, but they've got the capacity and the ability. That's one example, but there's a lot of other examples of people who are coming out of community colleges, and if they can have the capacity to learn, then we would like to bring them on and teach them how to sell, distribute, and manufacture Coca-Cola and all of our other products.
The reason I ask you the question, and first you saw from the audience, thank you for your commitment to hire the veterans, is that one of the things I have to say in sympathy with the institutionalized training programs of America and the community colleges and other places is that they either have to have a big alliance of medium and smaller size employees like your program or some big employers in order to drive the constant relentless change in curriculum necessary for them to be good partners for you. We can say, well, these institutions have all failed. They didn't change their curriculum every semester, but they've got to know what the numbers are. You just can't up and change and reallocate your resources unless you've got a certain driver. I mean, I talked a little last year about Orlando and having 100 computer simulation companies. It's pretty easy for the University of Central Florida, which operates basically on a 4-year and a 2-year level, to change these programs every semester, because they got 100 computer simulation companies there who tell them every single month what the changing training needs are. But they're all kind of right there in a mass. And that's a big challenge. That's why I think some of these workforce alliances like this skills right now are important. You going to say something?
Well, I just was going to comment, the Right Skills Now actually curriculum was developed by the business community, and businesses have to be more engaged with the community colleges to develop the curriculum that we need, because they think they know what we need, but it's not necessarily where the technology is today. And I think that's why Right Skills Now is so successful, is because that curriculum was designed by businesses along with the schools. So you're absolutely right, Mr. President. It really does make a difference if it's current and it's what the jobs are opening for today.
Mr. President, could I add something?
Sure.
Just very quickly. We have 3,000 what we call one-stop centers. And any business or anyone who's looking for a job can call or go online, dol.gov, come in, figure out if they need training. Instead of having businesses who can't afford training, we'll help identify the training program nearest them, but also help prepare and screen the workforce so that you can find the eligible veteran, youngster, or returning adult that wants to get a job. Those are free services that are available, but the problem, I think the myth out there, is that a lot of people don't want to deal necessarily with the federal government. And to be honest, we're trying to engage and build that trust. So we work with the private sector, we work with community colleges, we're trying to work with everyone, and community-based organizations and funders, because that's the way we're going to get our message out there.
Well, that sort of leads me into the next point. I saved Mr. Wilmers for last for a reason. Number one, in a world where it's easy to bash bankers in the aftermath, this man was named Banker of the Year. And he told me that he was the third largest lender of SBA loans to small businesses east of the Mississippi and the sixth largest in America in upstate New York. So he's clearly bent over backwards in his banking career to make affordable capital available to small business. And he told us a little bit about what the impediments to doing that are. And so I'd like to ask you, do you believe that there's a real prospect that we'll have more small business growth, and will they be able to get the capital they need, and what's the problem with the SBA program? And whatever else you want to say, but you really made a big impression on me backstairs when you said that.
Well,
so much so that I wanted to go blow my brains out or something. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here. Just to put things in perspective, remember that we had a huge financial crisis that started about 4 years ago, and there's nobody more concerned about the future than small business men and women. The average business is cut back dramatically and still making a profit. They're doing so, including in cutting back. They've cut back personnel, and they've found that it'll be a long time before they get to where they were before. On top of that, you've also got to remember that less and less jobs are being created by small business. Last year, only 33% of new jobs were created by small business. 20 years ago, it was probably twice that as a proportion. Also, less new businesses are being created every year. It's 20% less than about 4 years ago. Now, what are the problems? I guess the number one problem for a small business person is a lack of certainty. They want to know where they stand and what the future brings. And this is at a time where the Bush tax cuts are going to end at the end of the year, that the unemployment benefits extension end at the end of the year, that there's going to be the 3.8% tax on investments for the health care program. And on top of that, the debt ceiling is going to be lifted. As a result, if all those things happen on December 31st, that'll have a 3.5% to 4.5% impact on the GDP, and that scares businessmen to death. They like certainty. As far as the SBA is concerned, the SBA does a wonderful job providing hundreds of millions of dollars of loans every year, but it also has 998 pages of protocols to deal with. And to give you an example of a small loan that we gave last year, there's a company with 10 employees and $2 million in sales, and this company had to fill out 9 different forms and sign in 24 different places. Look at things a different way. Congress administration had a program for small businesses last year, I believe it's last year, for $26 billion, $30 billion, of which only $4 billion was drawn down by 332 banks out of the 7,200 banks we have in the United States. The $26 billion was not used. And of the $4 billion, half of the $4 billion was used to pay back TARP. There are so few banks that took the money, I presume, because they find dealing with the SBA too cumbersome. Matter of fact, only 700 of the 7,000 banks in the United States issued SBA, more than 10 SBA loans last year.
So why do you do it?
We do it because SBA loans only account for 3 to 5% of our loans, but we believe that we're community bankers, and we like to provide all the services we can to a community bank. To a community. It's just good business. And last year, I think we have provided about 7,500 loans, about $1 billion. We've got about over $5 billion small business loan portfolio. But small businesses will be big businesses one day, they hope. And in any case, it's just part of providing all the services we can to our communities.
What would you recommend the Small Business Administration do to make its programs more user-friendly?
Simplify their procedures. And on top of that, I think it would be useful for them to work more. They work with their banks, but they should work more with their banks to simplify the whole process. Last year, there were 200 odd bills proposed in Congress, of which I think something like 10 or 20 got passed. And the 10, 20 that got passed only extended processes that had been in place. The rest were political showballing of one way or another.
You know, I was telling when I was in office when Al Gore headed this reinventing government thing, one of the things that Erskine Bowles did when he was the director of Small Business Administration, is to cut the application form from an inch thick to a page front and back, and cut the answer time, yes or no, from 3 months to 10 days. But nobody ever told me about the back-end compliance costs, which is what you're talking about, how much data is required, how many processes. And I wouldn't be surprised if the whole financial crisis didn't lead the government to try to be more careful too. But this is something I think Secretary Solis, she ought to, and you too, since you're on that job council, we ought to take it back, and everybody should take a good look at this. Let's take some questions from...
Could I add one other
Yeah, sure.
One other thing that's needed very badly, as my colleagues have already said, is a better trained workforce, which is a daunting effort when you consider that 25% of the kids that are now in the 9th grade will not graduate from high school. At a time where 63% of the job openings would need some post-high school education, and 33% will need at least a college degree. In New York City colleges, 75% of the students, when they enter, need remedial courses in order to get to be able to do college work. And at Baltimore City Community College, that number is 95%.
I think we need to bring back to the high schools, the counselors, and to be able to explain what real jobs are out there. Everybody pushes for a 4-year college degree, but there may not necessarily be a job opening in that field. Either it's too broad or too specific. And the schools and parents no longer encourage people students to get into the technical skills and the trades. They don't even know what's available. We need to get them back into the high schools.
I'd just like to comment on this huge challenge that you raise about the need for remedial education when the students get to the community college. And this goes for students graduating from 12th grade, and it goes just as much for adults coming back into the community college system, which represents 40 to 50% of the students in many of these community colleges. And it is a terrible problem, but I want to emphasize that there are also solutions out there. There are people who are doing really innovative programs to figure out how do you simultaneously improve students' basic skills in reading, math, and writing, while they're learning job-relevant skills. So there's a program out of Washington State called iBest, which has phenomenal results and is being replicated around the country. And when I say phenomenal, they have their students in these programs where they have, in the classroom, they have a teacher who's doing the remedial work and a teacher who is teaching actual job-related skills. They are 9 times more likely to complete their degrees. So that's a phenomenal outcome. It exists, it's being replicated, it's being studied, and that's the kind of thing that we need to talk more about and make sure that investments are being made in those kinds of programs.
Mr. President?
Yeah, go ahead, Hilda.
I just want to say that under this administration, we are looking at different models, and models that probably have been looked at before. We look at what's happened in Germany, where they focus in at the secondary education level at the 10th grade, and they focus in on vocational careers right away. So you can veer students in that direction, or you can also choose to prepare students to go on to 4-year education. The President's talking about creating those career academies in schools and putting up funding for that, and also putting up more funding at the community colleges, because we need to deal with remediation. Got a lot of people who are out there who are unemployed right now, many who lost their jobs because maybe they only have a high school education, but were at making a wonderful living working at an assembly plant, and now find themselves that they don't have a job anymore, the job's gone, and they need to go back to school.
But I agree with that. And, you know, I've been away from this a long time, since I was a governor and even when I was president. But we had finally closed in the mid to late 90s, almost completely, not entirely. We'd gotten very close to closing the racial gap for the on-time high school graduation rate between African Americans and whites. And it was about 80, the difference was 80 and 81.5%. 82%. The Latino on-time high school graduation rate has always been lower, partly because so many first-generation immigrants dropped out to work and support their families, as you know. But it's very disturbing to me that this thing is sliding again. And because while not everybody needs a 4-year college degree, everybody does need to get out of high school so they can go to an apprenticeship program, go to a training program. And I wonder if we're entirely clear about why it happened. Did it happen because of what was the principal cause of dropouts in the 1980s, say, which is that if people got to the 8th grade and they couldn't read, they were bored stiff, and so there was no point in hanging around in school because the whole thing was a fraud for them because they couldn't absorb what they were taking from the 8th grade on? Is it because still some people have to get out and support their families? Or are there other reasons for this that you never hear anybody at any of our meetings, at least, come up with a really aggressive idea to try to get the on-time high school graduation rate up to 90% and understand what the economic implications of that are. But I think it's time we took another look at it, and I literally have been out of it so long I don't have an opinion about what all caused this. It maybe it's just the economy, but I think it's got to be some other significant issues. You want to?
Mr. President, I visited a high school in Buffalo earlier this week. The graduation rate there is 48%. The absenteeism rate on any given day is between 20 and 30%. 30% of the students 25 to 30% of the students belong one way or another to gangs. This is an enormous problem for the country, I think.
Do you believe it would be that bad if Buffalo didn't have some of the economic problems they have? Do you think this is mostly a function of the economic adversity they faced, or is it more larger social currents which would be there to some extent if the unemployment rate was half what it is?
I think they all come to play. There's no question that in some schools, in a school like that, there has to be a certain amount of despair. I went into a classroom, though, where there were about 10 students, and one of the students was asleep in the front, not in the back row, but in the front row. And the teacher didn't even bother to wake him up. But since I went in with the principal woke up the student. The student then sat up, but never looked at his book. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the economy, and it's a very troubling loss of hope and optimism in the country, and a lack of proper role models that a lot of these young students have. So they see somebody graduating from college or from high school in this instance and not getting a good job. Where's the incentive then to finish high school and so forth? And I think it's a siren call for business, civil society, and government to address this. And if you think about, like Mayor Emanuel out here before, what a great program and a challenge to the mayors of the country to say, how can you partner with some of these high schools and really develop programs where you have a commitment from businesses that if you can get properly educated, if you can get properly trained and are receptive to opportunities, we will work to help you find hope, find jobs. And I think that's what these kids need. They need a couple of instances of inspiration, hope, and examples that show them that it's worth the effort.
Yeah, if you look at that's why we wanted this young man, Kai, who just spoke to you earlier, to get up and talk about becoming an economic asset to Baltimore. I mean, I think it's almost impossible to overstate the impact of people thinking that tomorrow's never going to be better than today. But I also think it's a big argument for things like these skilled training alliance, because a lot of these people can still be, rescued, if you will, and retrained. We're about out of time. I wanted to we got a bunch of these questions from Twitter. I think some of them have been answered. We spent 2 generations pushing the value of a 4-year degree. How do we up the perceived value and prestige of community colleges? I think we addressed that here today. By the way, one of the biggest ones is now a 4-year college and a community college, Miami-Dade, and Eduardo Padron, who graduated from there and is now the president, was a first-generation immigrant who was from Cuba, who was denied admission to Princeton. He got an honorary degree from Princeton over the weekend. He's an old friend of mine. So I think, I think we talked about that. How can we reconnect and create jobs for disengaged and disadvantaged youth? I believe we at least addressed that without answering it completely. But the other question I got was not directly within the province of our bankers, but I'd like to just deal with this. Is there some way to get more seed capital for startups? From Michael Burcham, he says, it's a desert out there. Does anybody have any thoughts about the seed capital issue for startups? The last question, Mr. Wilmers is looking at this question for him. He put his glasses on and says, many big banks define a small business as having a revenue of $20 million or less when they release lending numbers. Do you agree with this?
I think our number is 10 million.
That's consistent with your numbers?
I would guess it's 10 million, but
10 million.
It depends on the business. You can't say it black or white.
What are yours?
Our revenues are $5 million, and you know, we have had 2 SBA loans, and I agree it's difficult to get, but it's a good program out there that is I wouldn't be here today if we didn't get an SBA loan. So the other suggestion, I guess, is really work with the local community banks. I've been very fortunate in working with mine, and they understand our business and our business models a whole lot better than the larger banks. So, you know, I think a lot of it is networking and finding out who you can work with to get the loans and the capital. It's not easy. I'd be lying if I said the last few years were easy, but it's getting better.
On the question of the seed capital from Michael Burcham, we didn't address it here, but the real answer is dependent on how much money you need and what you want it for. But if you want to start a reasonably traditional small business and you need some startup money, then you need to go to a community development financial program that basically gives the equivalent of microcredit by American numbers terms. The Grameen Bank has actually opened a branch in Harlem and several others in America, and it's doing quite well. And the other, when Mayor Emanuel was still working in the White House, and Hilda and her administration, when they went to work, and one of the things they did was to reinstitute the community development financial funding, and that provides some seed capital startups. So I would answer to this young man, you should check to see if your local bank participates in that, and if not, where is the nearest participating facility, because they are much more likely to fund startups because they get federal money to support and share the risk of doing that for modest sums of money. Anybody else got anything you want to say? Yes, sir. We'll go right around. You go first.
I feel maybe I've been a little bit negative, but one thing I'd like to say is that the President Obama's administration has a program for promised neighborhoods, and there were 339 applications, and 5 different communities were awarded $6 million a year each. And we sponsored one of them in Buffalo, New York. And as a result, we'll be, for all practical purposes, we'll be heavily involved in running two grade schools, a high school, and we're in the process of building a daycare center for a couple $1 million. And we believe it's our duty to help those institutions will help those people that need it the most.
Yeah, that's great. Just a quick challenge, I guess, to folks in the audience. We have a summer program initiative, and we are looking to get partners to join us. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that hire up people, young people, for summer jobs. We didn't get any money this time around from the Congress, so we're doing it on our own. And we're asking corporations, nonprofits, community colleges, and what have you to join us. We have 250,000 commitments for slots for mentoring internships. 90,000 are paid position. We love to have your support and involvement, and we will post and list the job. We will help screen. We will help do whatever we can. Just call us or go online, dol.gov/summerjobs. It's a big initiative for the White House.
As a private foundation, the Joyce Foundation is not really confined to addressing the political cycle or the business cycle. We can really look out. We have a very long time horizon, and as part of that, we are really interested in and willing to take chances on new ideas. We're in the business of not only identifying problems, which I think our panel has done a good job of identifying problems, but also identifying solutions and investing in them. And that's the approach that we take on workforce and other issues that we're working on. So I'm really interested in hearing from anybody on the panel or in the audience who thinks that there are ideas that we should be taking a look at that fit that long horizon and our willingness to take some chances on good ideas.
Yeah, President Clinton, once again, thanks for having me here. And I think the Clinton Global Initiative is a shining example of civil society and business and government all working together and collaborating, deciding what the problem is, how we can align, and what we can be for. And I think it's a great example moving forward. There's examples where it doesn't work that way, and when we're told and business is overly restricted, overly regulated, I think that's the wrong approach. I think aligning on what you're for and how to solve problems together in a collaborative way is something that needs to always be emphasized, especially in a challenged economy.
I'd just like to mention that I think it's really important for businesses to be engaged, whether it's engaged with your community colleges and community colleges to reach out to businesses to really see what the needs are, and also for business people to, as Steve mentioned, get involved in your schools. I do a program called Hope for Tomorrow, which is for young children, 8th, 9th graders, that are at risk to develop their full potential. So I just think it's real important that we, as business people, do be engaged in our community and help our children of today. And I really commend you for what you're doing here at the Global Initiative.
Well, thank you. One of the things, if you were here last year, you probably heard us talking about this. If you look at all the comparative test score data about American students and students overseas and then young people and what happens, we're quite competitive in elementary school. And then the gap shows up in middle school. And then in the STEM areas, it becomes like a chasm in high school. So we know when we start losing young people. But we also know that, again, these networks of cooperation in communities can bring people back into the community colleges, back into the training programs, connect them to employers who will hire them. And I just want to remind you all of why this is so important, quite apart from the moral and human dimensions of this. This is a fixable problem. An unfixable problem in the short run, if you're running a country and you're trying to bring it back, is the demography trap. The United States is both more diverse than other big economies, and we're younger. And having lost it, I can tell you youth matters a lot. Really, I mean, we got a younger workforce than Europe. We're younger than Japan. And believe it or not, within 20 years, absent a dramatic change in their immigration policy and their one-child policy, the American workforce will be younger than China's. So this is a problem today. We're trying to keep pulling our way back to full employment and bring America all the way back and take advantage of all these manufacturers that believe in America and want to come back again, and all the issues we talked about in the short run. But if you look out 20 or 30 years and you want your country not only to recover fully from the economic shock of the financial collapse and the years of very slow growth before that, this is where it is. We have to connect these young people to the world of work through education and training. And if we do, it gives an incalculable advantage and could really give us the chance to use the market economy to take a serious dent out of family poverty because we're younger. But if you lose all the younger people or you have sloppy systems that don't work to prepare and place them, you also lose a lot of your GDP potential. It becomes a severe constraint on American growth. So that's why we wanted to start with this panel. And I know you got worried about being too dour, but let me just remind you something. This guy lives in Buffalo. I know a lot about Buffalo. It is a wonderful city, but they have had body blow after body blow after body blow, economically, natural disasters, everything else. He's still up there lending money to small businesses, trying to figure out how to rescue kids. So, he's just trying to tell you the truth about what we're up against. And I'm going to do a lot of work after this is over trying to figure out how to fix the backside of the SBA process. I thought if we just shortened the loan application and got the thing in quicker, it would work. And apparently I have neglected it. Back when I was president, I neglected a major part of the job. I will say this. the president said the other day, several months ago now, that they were preparing changes that they thought would save small businesses $10 billion a year cumulatively in compliance costs with government. And I know that's part of what's in the purview of this Jobs Council you're on. But this is a really big issue. Compliance costs, delays, complexity in a time when people are already frustrated can, in the aggregate, say, well, I think I'll pass on this or that opportunity. So I'll do some work on that too. But I think they were great, don't you? This should make you... And I just want you to remember that our Small Business Person of the Year is a manufacturer and has run a small business as a manufacturer. When all this stuff comes back, even big companies now like to have manufacturing units with 300 employees or less because productivity grows faster if the people running the plants know all their employees, know them by name, have egalitarian procedures about who gets what place in the parking lot. You don't have to deal with all this other stuff. There's a lot going on that's good here, but we have huge gaps still, and getting the capital to flow where it's needed and training people for the jobs that are now open. So we're going to keep working on this till we, slowly chip away from it. And I'm really encouraged by what Secretary Solis said today about the new efforts being made by the Labor Department. I don't think the community colleges ever intended to drift off the script. And thank you, Ellen, for going on the board here. And thank you all. I thought you were great. Thanks.